All right, folks. This is going to be a fun one, I think. We're back. I say we're, but you'll notice it's only me this week. Rich had some pressing engagements that I think involved, I don't know, probably, I don't know. I think he's in Vegas, and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So I'm just going to say all kinds of crap to screw with his life. So he can mess with me about that when he comes back. So in the meantime, I'm Les Garner, artist and writer on numerous different comics. Um, Usually we have my buddy Rich Davis here, but this week we've got the guy who actually does all the work. I know he's going to watch this, so he's going to see this stuff. And what we usually do on this show each week is go through with some guests who are also artists and writers in the comic book industry and hit them with some fun questions about their working relationships and really kind of poke at them to see, because there's a lot of frenemies in the writers and artist camps, and we poke at them to kind of see, if we can get a little friendly rivalry started with people, to find out who does, who is the most vital in the pipeline of getting a comic book done, the writer or the artist. And I'm one of those jerks who's who does both. So I guess I'll play both sides of the coin this week. So I believe we have with us Mr. Alin Silverwood. So Alin, you want to join in here? All right. How you doing today, man?
I'm okay. How are you? How about yourself?
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself, man. What do you do, and what are you doing in comics?
Well, I started for work in comics at Marvel Comics on the editorial staff, and worked on titles like The Incredible Hulk and Ghost Rider and She-Hulk and G.I. Joe. Wrote a few short stories for them, and then I went to Hollywood and did work for Paramount Pictures on, home entertainment for things like Star Trek and several big movies and several small movies and things like that for several years. And then I went to work for Mattel, worked on Hot Wheels for a number of years. And all the time, after I'd left Marvel, I'd kind of thought, I really would like to get back into comics. So I found the indie community was doing these things all over the place, and I found Kickstarter, and they're doing things, and it's like, oh, wow, I can do this. So I started putting out my own comics, like finding guys that I could hire to help me do it. I had the concepts and my own designs and my stories to tell, but I needed artists, and I needed funding and all that. But so I got back into it and got started doing it. In the meantime, I wrote a couple of novels, and so basically I'm a writer. A writer and an editor,
Writer and an editor. Okay. Well,
I can't draw.
You can't draw.
Embarrassing. Yeah. I mean, I can art direct, but I cannot actually functionally make my hand do the things that need to be done to perform good art.
I see that a lot with writers. I've known a lot of artists who are closet writers, and a lot of them aren't very good.
It happens too.
And I've known a lot of writers who wish they were artists, and the difference I see between the two is the artists will certainly try to write, but a lot of times the writers, they're like, nope, I ain't even stepping into that. Nope.
Yeah, we can recognize our shortcomings on the art side. Sometimes the artists who can't write don't recognize their shortcomings on the writing side.
So most of the comics that I'm involved in, I actually probably 50% or more of them, I'm both writer and artist, but I'm very very persnickety about writing. I'm the artist who gets under the skin of the writers I work with, which if Rick were here, he would definitely attest to that, because
Well, I mean, the thing
the
is, it's a visual.
last books he's done that I've drawn them. So
It's a visual medium, so people will be a lot more forgiving of a weaker story with if they like your art
yep.
than they will of a good story if they just don't like your art.
I'm going to quote you on that to him, because
I mean,
I think this whole setup here with this podcast came about because of he and I always just getting on each other about the I don't personally I have a way of looking at it where it's like I think they're both equally important, but at different stages of the consumption.
It's all about like, sometimes it's kind of like, I mean, if you're just a writer, you aren't going to get a comic done without an artist. And if you're just an artist, you can get a comic done without a writer. It just may not be any damn good.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's where we at, there's where
yeah. Well, and I know personally, if I pick up a comic, it's probably because the artwork dragged me in.
Yeah.
And if the story isn't good enough to keep me there, no amount of great artwork is going to pull me back.
And I see a lot of times where there are stories out there that get a lot of accolades and, this is a good story, it's a good story. And I look at it and I go, why is this a comic book? There's nothing visually stimulating about this. Even with a good artist, it's like, this really should have been a piece of this. This should have been a novel or a short story. There's no reason why this is a comic book. This comic book is a visual medium. If there's no visual stimulation, if it's just a guy walking around in a t-shirt and jeans having conversations, I'm like going, I don't really want to, I mean, write a story. It's like, that's a story. That's not a comic to me.
That's
comic has visual stimulation.
It's good for me to hear that from a writer, because like I in talking with writers and people who want to be writers, I tell them the same things I tell artists all the time. I'm like, it's not have you read, it's how many times have you read Comics and Sequential Art from Will Eisner? How many times have you read it? If that number isn't at least 3, we're not even having a conversation yet.
That was my first favorite. The Spirit was out like I think before I even discovered Marvel and DC, I had found in the store a copy of The Spirit, and I was like, that's interesting. And I picked it up and I loved it. And that was probably my first introduction to comics.
Probably the first great piece of advice I got when I was trying to get my foot in the door in comics, I think I was about 19 years old. And I remember very specifically who told me this was Joe Quesada. Tells me, he's like, okay, you need these books. And I took notes and made a list of every book that he said I needed.
It's a good idea.
And it was funny because like when I pulled out a little notepad, he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm taking notes. He's like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, I'm serious. I'm like, that's why I'm here. But Comics Sequential Art was at the top of that list. And to this day, I think I've probably been through about 5 copies of it now.
And it's often about the sequential art. I mean, if you look at some of the art that's fantastic for storytelling, it's not always the most beautifully rendered stuff. Sometimes it's mediocre, the rendering. It's the storytelling.
Yes.
That really grabs you sometimes. I mean, beautifully rendered art will grab you, but the storytelling has to be there for it to really be great.
A few things are as disappointing to me as if I see a book and I'm like, wow, that's gorgeous. I buy it. I start reading it and I'm like, this doesn't like it's lots of well-drawn images.
Yeah.
But they don't. I'm like, this is a comic book. Why are you not using the medium as the medium's supposed to be used?
Yep. You see a lot of that.
Yep. That's something that really, really irritates me. I personally, as an artist, I think I'm decent. I think I'm pretty decent for having been doing this as long as I have. But when it comes to actual rendering, that the rendering is always second behind the storytelling. You know, if the storytelling is not solid, then the rendering does not matter at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's very nice for me to hear that from a writer though who sees that. So,
Well, I mean, there is a bottom level to what you can do with your rendering, no matter how good your storytelling is. Your rendering, if you're doing stick figures, you can be the best storyteller in the world, and your rendering needs to be better too. I mean, there is a I mean,
there's a threshold
know
there.
your bad rendering can be too. You know, I've seen
Yeah,
some bad rendering that I'm like, that rendering is so bad. I don't care if the story is good. I'm not going to try to fight over
yeah,
what I can understand in these images. You know, it's like,
yeah.
nah. So there is definitely, I mean, it definitely is a factor. I wouldn't say it's a non-factor. It may not be as important as the storytelling, but there has to be some level of understanding things like perspective and proportion and that sort of thing. So it's still important.
The fundamentals need to be there for sure, definitely. But you can look at. There's a lot of stuff that I've seen in the last few years that I think of as being kind of retro,
Yeah.
where the art is using thicker lines and is very simplistic. And the guy who I look to as being one of the spearheads of that was Mike Allred,
Uh-huh.
back with Madman and all the stuff he was doing forever ago. And it worked. It worked.
There's some guys that are doing a great job of that stuff,
Yeah, and it's not the kind of stuff that really turns me on. Although I love, David Mazzucchelli.
Well, here's the thing. This is where we get into style, the discussion of style. There are stylistic things that people go bananas for, big names that I look at and I'm just going, I'm not into it. It doesn't work for me. That's when it comes down to a style thing. If it's like a guy has the art skills, it's like I can recognize the art skills are there, but I don't glom onto that style. It's like, is the storytelling there? But then the style thing becomes a very subjective thing. That is a person to person thing. And it's like a lot of people might love that style and it might go real far, and there might be people who can't stand it. And it doesn't mean it's bad art. It just means it's not for them. You don't want to say somebody's a bad artist just because you don't like their style. If you can see that they clearly have a command of what they're doing, there's a lot of guys that are big names and stuff that I'm like, I just don't like their style. It's just not my thing. But
yep.
But
I'm
say they're not a great artist. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. The fundamentals are always important, and if the artist doesn't have those, then it's like, just go back and study for a while, kid.
Yeah, I know. It was funny because like one of the big things that we used to see up at Marvel, and I still see, I swear to God, the hardest thing, and then I find that when I try to draw, this is hard for me too. Proportion is so hard. That's got to be the hardest thing to master. It like people would always have a weird thing with proportion. It's like, why are his thighs so short? Why is his face so long? Or something like that. They can even get perspective better than proportion.
I think a lot of times, like there are some basic rules that you can follow that will make that stuff very easy to remember.
Yeah,
but a lot of us. A lot of artists they'll kind of look at those, they'll look at the simplest rules and they'll go, that's so simple. And they'll just kind of, and they'll blow it off and go on.
They assume it's going to be just there. And it's like, well, no, it isn't always just there.
Yeah. It's like, no, it's like, take your thumb and use it as a measuring tool. It's like, there's a reason that's an old stereotypical.
Yeah.
And it's like, if it worked 600 years ago, it probably still works. Yeah. Well, I'm going to get over into some of the spicier stuff for a second, because Rich always likes that crap. And I'm like the most laid back guy in the world with this stuff. And he's always trying to get people to like go back and forth. It's like, oh, the writers are more important. No, the artists are more important. He's always into that stuff. But so I'm curious. Let me take a look through my notes. I got a couple of things put together. Oh my God. I had some questions put together. I was like, what would Rich say? There's one. What would Rich say if he were an artist asking these questions to a writer? Because he always asks the artists terrible questions from a writer's perspective. And so there was one of them I had up that was how much of your job is actual writing, and how much of it is staring at a wall waiting for the magic idea fairies to show up.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, how much of it, as a writer, how much of it is cogitating versus actual writing?
Yeah.
Is that what we're trying to? That's the thing. There is more time spent cogitating. More time spent trying to like how do I fix this problem in a story? Like how okay, like here's my story, here's what I want to do with it. Here's some of the stuff that I want to do. And how do I connect to that in a way that makes sense? And how do I overcome, like, now I've got this thing and I'm like, oh, this is a cool thing, but it presents a problem back here with another cool thing that I like. How do I get from this cool thing to this cool thing and solve that problem so that it makes sense? Um, Comics is it's pretty easy to do in comics sometimes, because sometimes you can just dummy something up. It's like, there's a lot of junk science in a lot of our comics, and sometimes you can get away with that, sometimes you can't. But there's I my professor in college was very fond of pointing out the difference between being realistic in your story versus being believable. um, Sometimes your stories, if it's a fantasy story or a science fiction story, or like superheroes, I mean, it's like, well, that's not believable, is it? Because it's not realistic. It's not realistic. I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say. That is not realistic because it's not real, and we know it's not real. However, it can be believable within the confines of the story mechanics. If you've set up a world and you've established that these are the parameters in that world, then it has to stay believable within those parameters. And that is sometimes the biggest struggle you have as a writer, is remaining believable within the world you've created or set up and established with your story. So that there's a difference between realistic and believable. It's like most of our stories are not realistic, but believable is all about staying true to the principles and the world and the structure that you have established as you go in your story.
That brings to mind something that I harp on writers about all the time. I can think of about 4 different projects I've been on in the last 3 to 4 years where I have asked the writers, do you have a Bible, a story Bible I can look at? Because if you do, as an artist, I'm like, please let me have that. Because before I get into the script, if you have a story Bible, then I can already have familiarized myself with the characters, the settings, specific props, things like that. And I probably want to go ahead and do that just to have some early design sketches and things built up so that, that kind of thing. And I'm wondering, is that something you do for your books? And
I have it's a loose Bible. I mean, it's like I will definitely have like notes for my characters. I will definitely have an overview for my story, like where this is going, what are the important elements. I will have all of that. I mean, I call it a loose Bible. But what's interesting is that rarely am I ever asked for it by artists. And I'm like going, why don't they think to ask for that?
They really should.
You'd think that they would. I mean, I don't think to offer it to them either, but it's like, certainly it seems like something that I would like, oh, if somebody asked, I'd be like, well, that's good. That's impressive. I'd be impressed by that. Somebody asking about it, that's kind of impressive. It's like, yes, okay, here you go. I will tell you this stuff. It's like, it's hard to work with an artist on a story when you're trying to keep them in the dark for what's coming, and it's like, you don't want to do that. You want to let the artist know, everywhere you're going, but you don't, as a writer, you're just thinking about getting the next page back from them. So you're not always going, here's the whole story, because if you dump it on some guys break down. It's like, that's it. They just They just break down. It's like you gave them too much. They can't handle it. They stop drawing. It's over. So I'm going, I don't know which is which, but I would love guys coming to me and going, I'd like to see the whole story. I'd like to see whatever, everything you've got. Give me everything, all the notes, everything. I could be like, then I'd be like, yes, absolutely. If you want that, you can handle that. I'd be happy to give that to you and share that with you. But I'm not going to throw it at somebody on the off chance that it's like too heavy for them and they break, Because honestly, a lot of guys are very fragile. It doesn't take much for them to just kind of go, now they're in the weeds. And it's like, no. Just look at what I wrote on the page, because I write everything on the page. When I write my plot script, it's all there.
That was another thing I was going to get to, because you said you worked at Marvel. Yep. And, like I still use the old lingo of, Marvel style and DC style referring to scripts. Mm-hmm. And I've had some people who give me, a very super tight, very tight, aggravatingly tight DC style script where like crap, like I could tell you where the loose paper is in the wastebasket in the corner of the room. They're going that far with it. That's also an irritation as an artist, is like when a writer, you could tell they love their world and they're so into it that they've written all this detail. And then when it's just impossible to put all of that into a given panel,
that's
and they
bad
get
writing. Yeah. You can't. I see guys come in with stuff at me, like stuff that I'm editing, and it's like I'll get this stuff from guys, and it's like there are at least 3 or 4 different actions in one panel that they want, and it's like this is not a motion thing. This is a series of still images, and you're asking for 4 things to happen here that cannot possibly happen in a still image, and it's like it drives me crazy. I don't know how to, like an artist, and it's like if I threw that at an artist, I would be like ashamed of myself. I'm like, how does an artist look at that and go, I don't know what to do here, because you've asked me to do, in one panel you've said that, John superhero lands, picks up a car, throws the car, and turns and says something to somebody. And it's like, okay, first off, you can't do all that.
If it's an action landing and it is separated by a comma or an and, then that's another panel.
Pretty much. Sometimes, being
a little snarky about it there, but for the most part, it's you really don't.
Sometimes you're also jammed as the writer. Now, coming back to the writer side of this thing, sometimes you're jammed up and you're going, I've got to make this much story happen by this point in page count. And I'm going, okay, what can I do? How much can I possibly get into this panel that can be one action, or it can be done with one image? It's all about one image portraying as much as it can possibly portray. And so sometimes I will get very specific about that. This image needs to be this. I love to leave a little wiggle room. And of course, even with my artists, it's like they can come back and suggest stuff in the layout stage. It's like, what about something like this? And I might say that doesn't work because here's why, and it relates to something somewhere else that's important, or maybe it works. Great. That's kind of important, but it is about getting, in order for the story to be told, what images need to be shown to say these important things, these points that don't wind up kind of leaving a hole in your story,
Something I see from time to time with writers that I understand it and it has its place, I think, is like sometimes I've seen writers who will run into the kind of thing you're talking about where they're like, oh God, I've got to get from point B to point E. Well, what's C and D doing in here, and how much room do I have to tell that?
Exactly.
And a thing I commonly see writers do with that is actually just like pop off a description of like 1 or 2 images and call for like near splash pages that they're going to put basically a lot of text into. Yeah. And I've seen it work on occasion. It can, but It's
I'll tell
like,
you, here's the thing about that. It's really funny. I have gotten into some hot water with this discussion. Now we're talking about, you want to talk spicy. Here's a spicy discussion for you. I got into. I didn't know this was even controversial. I came out of Marvel. At Marvel, here's the thing that happened. Here was the process. Okay, the writer turned in a plot, and the plot, however loose or tight it might be, went to the artist, the penciler, came back, and then the writer got the pencils would go to the anchor, but the writer then does the script from seeing the actual drawn art, which
yeah,
was
putting
wonderful
words
for
in
someone
mouths.
like Peter David, who was amazing at looking at the art and playing off of the art. He would play back and forth with his artist. It's like, that's amazing. And his skill at that was like kind of
That's a very
legendary.
specific skill.
That was legendary. But the thing is, here's the thing. Now you're doing the script, looking at the art as the writer, and I'm going, okay, so the writer puts in the balloons and numbers them and writes the script on a page to tell the letterer where to put the balloons in these panels, because he knows what information needs to come first, what information needs to not be covered up in the panels, stuff like that. He knows that because that's the story he wrote. So for me, there was never any controversy about the idea that it is the writer who does the balloon placement for the letterer. And then I got into doing indie stuff, and suddenly there was somebody one day talking about like the letterer does the balloon placement, and I'm like, why would the letterer do the balloon placement? He is not the writer. And a couple of letterers understood what I was talking about. A couple of letterers went bananas. It's like, well, it depends on whether or not you've ever been a writer, I suppose. But a couple of them went kind of bananas on me, and I'm like going, but you don't know the story. And it's like, I've seen stuff come back where it's like, and there's a very specific, on any given page, order in which these balloons must be read in order to make sense. And if there's anything that doesn't quite get out, and of course, sometimes fitting things in becomes very difficult when you get back from the artist a page. It may not have left you quite the room you needed over here, but you have more over here. So now you have to restructure your balloons and your script, so that becomes a thing that only the writer can do,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for the writer to at least have a crack at doing the balloons. And if letterer can come back and say, well, I could put this here. And then the writer can say, well, yes, that works. Or no, if you put it there, then it comes out of order of what has to happen in the next several balloons, or something like that. So there's definitely got to be some writer and editor for what is the word I'm looking for? They've got to do a little bit of the forecasting for where these balloon placements are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in my mind, and I don't think that's negotiable. It's important.
To pick on the artists a little bit, something that I find artists, because I've done some art directing and things and worked with other artists and stuff, and something that I see, especially from your more inexperienced artists, is not composing there's layers of composition to a page. There's the overall page and the flow that it needs to get to take you from the upper left to the bottom right. There's that. Then there's the flow within each panel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And then within those panels, there's the placement. There's the artist, depending on what the pipeline established is. I typically think of it as the artist needs to compose those panels with dialogue in mind, so that in these days, like a lot of the books I've worked on, it has been the letterer doing the placement, which has gotten on my nerves a lot.
I don't think it's a good idea. Now, I know a lot of good letters, and there are letters I would trust to do it.
Yeah,
I'm not slamming letters in general. I'm just saying that in general, I think that your writer, your editor needs to have the first say or the first pass at where these things need to be. But I think, going back to something you talk about, like artists not necessarily leaving room for balloon placement stuff. I like to put my script in, or at least my proposed script, in my plot. This tells the artist, if they're looking, where these balloons are going to need to be. It's like, if you know that character A is going to say this before character B says this, then there needs to be room for a balloon from character A before a room for and sometimes they'll have it slammed over so that like suddenly character B has to speak first or something. And it's like, no, didn't you see in the script and
you end up with tails going all over the place.
Yeah, you have to kind of circle it around and it's like, pay attention to exactly what I've put in my. Don't just look at the description for the panel that you're drawing. Look at the script so you can think about where the balloons are going to have to go, because you need to know as the artist where to leave room for that stuff. That's important. That's a part of the job.
Yeah,
and I don't see a lot of guys getting that. Some guys are great at it. Some guys not so much. But it's just one of those things that it takes time. Experience will help you with that sort of thing. I mean, some of these guys, like you said, they're inexperienced and they don't necessarily know that yet. And, somebody has to be patient with them and explain it to them. And patience is very important in working with talented young artists, or new artists. Patience is to as much as you can afford without tanking your project, of course.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think is really important when you're not, of course, coming out of a larger environment like a Marvel or something like that, I think is very, very different than working with indies, where typically you're going to be much more of a collaborative. I think probably more of a collaborative team, and you've got to build that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes here's the thing: if you're the creator and it's your project and you're paying the bills, it's like,
oh yeah,
it's like, well, you're doing work for hire. I mean, yes, you're talented. Yeah, you can do whatever you want with your art, but you're hired for a job. That's a different thing. You're not. I'm not giving you money to do whatever you want. I'm giving you money to do what I'm giving you money to do. That's a thing that's always been hard. Now, when I worked in studios in Hollywood, doing advertising and stuff, artists would be losing their minds because it's like they would do a beautiful thing and send it to the studio, and somebody at the studio wouldn't like something. And it's like, but that is perfect. That is a great piece of art. It's like, but it doesn't do what they need it to do. You're working for them. You're a great artist, and no one's taking away from your talent. But in the end of the day, the person who's paying you've got to do what they need you to do, regardless of whether you think it's good or not. Now, there comes a point where you might say, I can't do that and come out looking bad like that. And that happens. Let me tell you, as someone who's an editor, there are times when you're like doing editing for people and you're like, and then they go and they pass that by and they put it out and put you down as the editor, and you're looking at it and going, this is a disaster. This is nothing I would have approved. And it makes me look bad. I'm like, don't do that. You have to know where you're compromising your professional reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Your professional reputation can be compromised. However, sometimes it may not be what you want, but it's not compromising your reputation, So you kind of have to know the difference. It's like, as an artist, it's like, well, that's not what I would do, or it's not what I would think is best, but I can still do it and get, obviously keep myself employed, and keep getting work by just doing this and going, okay, it's not my favorite idea. It's not exactly what I would have done with that, but it's fine. It's just not my favorite thing. So I'm like, I don't have to feel like my reputation's at stake for doing it this way, because that's what, was asked for of me. But then there comes a time where it's just like, it's too much, I'm sure that happens, but
I took kind of probably a similar kind of round robin path in, out, and back to comics that you did. I worked as a technical director in 3D modeling and animation for about 20 years.
Cool.
So, a lot of what you're saying, I'm like, yes, you're preaching to the choir, because I've had to manage like teams of art up. I think the largest was about 40 artists.
Oh yeah.
And man, it is cat herding. It is.
Oh yeah, and that's not that now. Cat herding is a thing that goes way beyond just artists. I work with teams of writers and stuff, and it's like sometimes it is very much. I should just use this term with somebody. It's like I'm herding cats. It's all about like getting people to communicate back to you. Communication is the thing. It's like if I was to say one thing that's more important than anything else at all, more important than how good you are at anything, it's communication. It's like if you say I'm going to work with you, and they say okay, you can work with me or whatever. You need to communicate regularly. You need to answer every email and every question in every email. You need to respond, and you need to do it in a timely fashion. And if you can't, you need to explain why. Because at some point, someone's going to say, this person is not communicative with me, and I need someone who's communicating with me. And now I'm sitting here months down the line from where I should have been done with a comic, and you have cost me a window of opportunity that I had that is now gone thanks to you not communicating with me and not turning in your work. I mean, the communication first, like
Yep.
communicate. If there's a problem, tell me there's a problem. And if it's a problem and a serious, real problem, that's great. But when that problem has passed, I expect you to get back on the wagon. And if you're not back on the wagon after that, then I'm just going, well, you were just using that horrible thing as an excuse to just blow me off. And then I'm just going to fire you. I've had to do that. I've had to do that a couple of times. It's like I gave a guy a little leeway. It basically tanked me for a whole year because he had a really bad situation. And I'm like, okay, I totally have to understand that. No problem. You fix that. And then a couple of months goes by and he goes, well, that's resolved. But now I have these other things that I got to do. And I'm going, but you owed me 2 pages, just 2 pages. And you are now telling me that I'm going to have to wait for these 2 more pages, another 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks. Okay, great, fine, whatever. 2 weeks go by and I'm asking for these pages and then I'm not getting responses at all. No communication. It's like that lack of communication is where you die. That's the hill you die on. I'm sorry.
I'll drop a personal story that kind of dovetails off of that. That's kind of my personal outlook on that as an artist. Almost 3 years ago now, I started working on a book called Homestead with Dirk Manning. And love Dirk, great guy, one of my favorite writers in the business, been friends with him forever. Dirk and I had been wanting to do this book called Homestead for a long time. And finally got the script. I'm like, yes, this is awesome. Great. Start working on it. I end up in the hospital for 6 weeks from a double stroke.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And wiped out the entire left side of my body. Here's the fun part. I was doing page layouts on my iPad as I was getting put in the hospital.
Oh man. Well, that's
dedication. So I'm in the bed after they put me in, and I've got my iPad there, and I literally can feel my left arm just drifting away. And I'm like, don't care. And I keep drawing, and I finally called Dirk, and I'm like, hey man. And he's like, oh dude, what's going on? And I was like, well, I just want to let you know I might be a little bit late with these layouts. And he's like, what's up, man? What's going on? We can work on something. I was like, well, I'm in the hospital. And he's like, what's up? And I was like, well, I had a stroke. and he's like, what? And he's like, pause the whole project. I'm like, don't you dare. I was like, right. I was like, don't you pause a damn thing. I was like, this thing continues. I was like, it affected my left hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm still drawing. I was like, this book will live no matter what. And I literally did the layouts for the rest of it. Was a 100-page graphic novel. I did the layouts for the rest of it while I was in the hospital for 6 weeks. Came out and rejigged my studio so that I could work one-handed and finish that book. And then we ended up getting we were a finalist for a Ringo on it.
Wow. See, now most guys are almost nobody's that kind of dedication. Nobody. That's really rare.
That's where
that's the thing I'm talking about, where you've got somebody that's like, had a stroke or a death in the family or something. It's like, it's like you've got to go, okay, now how do I adjust the time frame for my project to work with that and give this person the time that they need as a human being. You've got
Yeah.
to do that. And if you can't, then you have to work out what you're going to do. But it's communication. You're talking. But it takes both people talking to do that. Now, here's the thing. There's always an exception. There's always like something happens to you. You have a stroke. Maybe you go unconscious and they don't talk to you for a week or two, and they don't know because nobody's telling
Yeah.
the person's hired you that you've had a stroke. They don't know. They don't know what's happened. For all they know, you just ghosted them. They don't know. Also, like now, this just happened to me recently. I'm guilty too. We all make mistakes. I had right at the beginning of the last Kickstarter I just finished up. It's actually still open for late pledges. I'm saying that now, but right at the beginning of this thing. Now, this is a project that took a lot of cat herding, like more cat herding than ever. And I'm talking about some great cats, but it's cat herding. And I had on another project of mine send me 3 pages of layouts to approve for him to proceed on. And I got that and went into this crazy ass Kickstarter campaign, and my life became 24/7 this Kickstarter campaign. And I forgot that I had gotten those layouts, and I just found them. The campaign ended, and I just found that email with those layouts so I could come back and say, yes, these are great, proceed. So the delay, is not the artist's fault. The delay is my fault, and I'm taking responsibility for that. I'm not going to blame somebody for my own, like I had a legitimate reason for being sidetracked, but in the meantime, my artist had no idea. What happened to me. He probably sees me working and doing stuff. Maybe he saw that I was nuts. He's been through stuff himself where I've had to kind of wait, and I can see what he's doing. He's busy. We have a pretty good understanding of where each other is with stuff that's kind of keeping us from focusing strictly on that particular project. But in a case like that, it's a thing where, you kind of got to go, well, sometimes stuff does slip through the cracks, and you got to look at that and go like, well, how often does it happen, and how damaging is it when it does? And versus maybe it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is I try to be as compassionate as I can be. I try to be as understanding and patient and giving about things as possible. It takes a lot for me to say to a guy, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to replace you. There has to be a lot of factors before I will say, I got to go with somebody else now, Because I think people are human, and we are not perfect, and we got to think
it's because I've known people in the business who are really kind and really compassionate and very, very easygoing. And then I've known some people who are just absolute ball busters.
Yeah.
And, I personally think of myself as being somewhere kind of in the middle of that.
Yeah, I probably am too.
But, I can appreciate meeting folks who are, who understand that, there is life involved in things. This is
the way I think we should all work with everything in the world. It's like, life is also a thing.
Dirk was fully ready to just pause that entire project for as long as it needed to be paused. And I was very grateful for that. We did end up rejigging some time frames on it just a little bit, but not that much.
Well, yeah, sure. That's definitely going to slow you down.
It was it was interesting because I absolutely insisted. There was a set of paintings I was going to do for it, and I was like, nope, I'm still doing them. It's like, my attitude about it was, I have to do this. This is how I make my living.
That's
if
a lot of people have to deal with that every day.
Yeah.
Going to work. It's a job. It's work.
It's like if you don't, it's not a hobby for me. I have to get this stuff done. This is what I have to do. And if I can't do that, then it's a life of disability for me. And I'm not cool with that. So, nothing against anybody who needs it, but, let's see. Somebody said, oh, there was an interesting comment there. Sometimes you need a project to force you to get better when you're sick. For me, that's one of the things I told Dirk was that, I was like, if it kills me, this book gets done. He was like, I'm not going out on an unfinished project. Like that's been a thing. My wife jokes about it. She thinks it's funny that I'm like always have like 3 different projects going on. And there's always an unfinished project. I'm like, well, I can't die. I have an unfinished project.
I mean, I'm severely ADD, like diagnosed, like no joke. I am severely ADD. So I have always got more than one thing going on because I can't stay focused entirely on any one thing for any length of time. It's
Oh,
like I got to bounce around a little.
I would. My dream scenario for work is that I have a project, and that's all I work on is that project. One thing from start to finish. Then another thing, because I was saying this to dude behind the scenes earlier. It was like I am wickedly myopic. Like I'm a dog with a bone, man. I'm after that bone. I'm on that, and I will forget everything else. Nothing else matters until that job is done. So and when I'm able to do that, I'm happiest. So that's one of those oddball things, and unfortunately, it actually ends up a lot of times where the other folks in the project there will be windows of time that come up that I have to fill with other work because of slowdowns in the pipeline or whatever. Say, oh, well, this needs to go to the colorist or this needs to go to an inker or, whatever it is, you've got multiple people. So there's almost always going to be a speed bump somewhere. And when the speed bump hits, I'm like, well, I have this much time that's open now. I have to fill that time to make my living. So I end up with 2 or 3 projects. It just happens. So,
that's
man, I am enjoying this conversation quite a bit, dude. I was really
glad. I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about with you guys, but okay, let's do it.
Well, I mean, it's usually Rich usually likes to push the spicy side of things and get people to he's like, come on, name names. And, it's like, try to get people to bitch about artists or bitch about writers or whatever. But, I'm always the peaceful guy who's like, no, man, I just want to talk about the business and, find out stuff from people. So
I could name names of people, but it's like, honestly, for the most part, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about anybody. There's not a lot of people that I'm like, oh, that guy. Ew. It's like I might have had some bad experiences, didn't work out with a couple people, but it's like it didn't make them a bad person or a bad artist. It just made it maybe a bad match, And I'm like, I'm willing to acknowledge that. It's like, let it go,
So
there are guys who have gone off on, like just kind of gone off and ghosted me in the middle of a project, and then sometimes some of those guys will come back and I'll work with them later. It happens like that too. But I've had some guys that have just ghosted me to the point that I'm like, I can't ever give you work again. It's just too risky.
Yeah,
that's really the only thing.
I did the obligatory Google search, before getting in here, and ended up on. I'm pretty sure this is your homepage. Alin Silverwood, speculative fiction. Is that you?
It's a dead page. Yeah,
it's probably. It looked like it might be a little bit old, but that was
a dead page. It's outdated, and I haven't had. What happened is the guy that was doing my web pages and stuff. Something changed, I think, with his job or something like 3 years ago. So my web pages are all at least 3 years out of date. I have to redo them myself, and I've got somebody who's trying to help me do that right now, but they're not anywhere near.
I have said this before on here, and people laughed at it. That when it comes to art and writing, those who can do, those who can't, have really up to date websites.
That's probably true.
It's very true. Like, I know my website right now is 4 years, 5 years out of date at least.
Oh yeah. See,
I'm just like,
not just me.
Don't know when that's going to get fixed.
I actually am in the process now of probably taking my personal name website and wrapping it up under my Pop Skull website and just having it be, like one section of my website is me. And then the other section, the rest of my website is my publishing thing. There's Pop Skull,
Okay.
That's rather than
just we're talking about that. Yeah. What's the URL for that?
what will be the URL for that.
Okay.
um, you can do popskullpress.com, and that's another one that was done at the same time as my author one. Popskullpress.com is there, but again, 3 years or so outdated, or 3 or more years outdated.
I
But
got
it's
you.
there. I wind up using more of um, my page on Facebook at this point, you know. Um,
Isn't that kind of the way? Like I'm the same way. My Facebook presence is the main place that people find me for things.
it's easy. It's, you know, it's like for all of our frustrations with Facebook and all the things we're frustrated about, it's still easier for me to do stuff on my Facebook page than it is for me to do an actual web page. You
I mean,
know?
I still pay for hosting on a
Yeah,
yearly basis,
yeah.
and I probably use my hosting more for the back end storage than I do the actual web service.
That's funny. Yeah, yeah. Well, you know.
So it kind of works, but it is what it is, man. Eesh. So I was what I was curious about is I'm just looking and I see a lot of different genres of work, and I know a lot of folks
Yes.
tend to kind of pick a lane and stay in it, but
Not
you know.
me. Nope. I'm not that guy. You're looking for that guy. I do epic fantasy novels and I do superhero comics, maybe some superhero novels. I've got a steampunk novel in the process. I had a steampunk comic that's fantastic going on. I've got some paranormal stuff happening, and yeah, yeah.
Oh man,
I
that's
also
crazy.
I also edit for some mystery authors, um, including a USA Today best-selling author. And I might be working on some mystery novels as well. My problem is that in the last 3 years, here's the thing: I was just kind of getting things ramped up and going between the pandemic. I think during the pandemic, I kind of like shifted my mindset. And by about 21, 22, I was like, okay, I've just done a couple of things right before the pandemic. The pandemic kind of knocked me off, and then I reoriented myself. And then in 2022, I got hit with 2 surgeries and then another surgery a year after that. So I had like 3 surgeries in 2 years, or three
Ooh,
surgeries in 3 years, something like that. So I had all these surgeries, which I'm still
you need
never
to find a
recovered.
better hobby.
I've never recovered from the surgeries. I'm like my
Oof.
left hand is screwed up. You like who am I talking to? But like yeah, like I have problems that I haven't been able to quite recover them, and it's derailed everything. I had all this stuff I kind of started juggling all these balls in the air, and now I'm kind of going. They're still kind of like I'm trying to keep them in the air while I'm like going. I'm working kind of like half, like I'm not.
I understand that all too well.
Yeah,
Um,
it's,
I haven't been able to type in almost 3 years now. So I do like all of the writing I actually finished a novel about 4 months ago, first draft of a novel, but
awesome.
all of the writing that I do with voice to type.
Yeah, yeah.
I speak it all out and then I'll hunt and peck to go back through and tweak it.
If I try to type steadily for more than an hour with my left hand seizes up, and then I have to kind of break it loose, and then I can't use it for another day.
Oh man.
It's just screwed up because I had something go wrong with like a bulging disc that basically started making my whole left arm die. My left
Oh
arm
yeah.
was basically dying. I was losing the use of my left arm, and they had to do the surgery where they had to cut off a piece of bone to let this bulging disc stop pressing on the nerves of that arm.
Nerve impingement. Sounds like a
And
nerve
unfortunately, some
impingement.
permanent damage had already happened by the time that we got to that surgery. Because I thought I just had a pinched nerve, and I kept trying to work on it like that, and that was
Ooh.
not the case. And you know how easily. And the other thing is, I had this surgery, this big surgery on my face, and they basically cut my head open like a Pez dispenser, and had to move some of my jaw stuff around. And
Oof.
unfortunately, when they put it all back together, I had been like disconnected for so long that the nerves are dead. So like my bottom lip and my chin area, this is all I want to say numb, but numb isn't really the way to describe it. It's just kind of tight and paralyzed. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sometimes numb too, but it's like, and that's constant. So it affects me talking and speaking and eating. And and it's like Chinese water torture because it's 24/7. If you imagine someone running up to you and just grabbing and clenching your face like this, like on your face, this is what it feels like 24/7, relentlessly.
See,
No,
the
no
left
break.
side of my mouth is exactly like that.
Like that. It's like you'd think that I had a stroke or something, but it's like
Yep.
it's just this is just nerve things, I think, or muscle and nerve. I don't know what, but
It's
it's terrible. Isn't it just like doesn't it just eat at your brain all day long, all night
oh
long?
I don't think you can see on here, but like sometimes people see it because I'll have my camera in different angles. You know, I've got a wall of guitars hanging behind me because I've
Oh wow,
played guitar since I was a little kid,
very cool.
and right now is the longest I've gone without playing a guitar since I was 6
Oh man,
because my left hand. And you know, they told me I'd never walk again,
huh.
and said I'd never walk or use my left arm again. But you
And
know,
you're still drawing comics.
I'm still drawing comics. Well, and I spend actually where I'm headed to as soon as we wrap up here. I go to the gym every night, and I've gotten back to where I did last week. I did a 500-pound CrossFit sled pulled for 75 yards.
Whew. Well, you were
So,
taking care of yourself, sir.
I've been a
Man,
martial arts and weightlifting nut for over half my life. So like the
fitness will
whole
serve you well.
yes,
You know,
fitness.
I'm not very good about fitness. I don't get a lot of action. I'm
Yeah,
just
I've been a hardcore fitness junkie and gym rat forever. So when the stroke happened, like I looked at my son and I was like, well, challenge accepted. Here we
yeah,
go.
that's amazing.
And so I'm in the gym every night for 2 to 3 hours. Managed to get up to a 225 bench press the other day. So the arm works, but the fingers don't. So
Yeah, yeah.
I take my right hand and I'll position the left hand on things. And once the finger's there and I put them in position, they lock in,
Hold
and
in.
then I
Yeah.
can lift and push and do all kinds of stuff with it.
That's
So
heroic.
it's
Heroic.
the coolest new thing that started happening is my wife and I have started playing volleyball in the swimming pool with at the gym, and it's not really volley. She's like throwing beach balls up, and I bind my right hand behind my back so that I have to use the left hand to hit it, and that's forcing the arm to get up and do things. And yeah, so I mean
Oh, all the weird little things that we have to do, right? And sometimes you
and
figure out there's doctor. I have seen every kind of doctor, and they will give you a million things, and you'll go home and you'll figure something out. Like I figured out some things after seeing like all these physical therapists and chiropractors. It's like there's a few exercises that I do that I figured out on my own, and then I went and told them about it. And they're like, "That's amazing, do that." And I'm like, "Okay,"
let's
you know,
it,
you gotta think for yourself. Sometimes it's like no matter
I've
what.
been adapting things from like when I was in the reason I was in the hospital 6 weeks was 4 weeks of it was inpatient rehab.
Oh,
And right off the bat, they try to learn your history and stuff like that. And my wife is Asian. My son got one of his black belts under me and things like that. And so like they found out pretty quickly that I kind of know my way around the body and all that. And then anatomy study as an artist, it all kind of goes together. And
yeah.
they asked me at one point, they were taking me through these different exercises. And I was like, oh, that's chudanuke, that's sotouke, that's geidan barai. And I'm like, going through Japanese names of all these things. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, this is from what I study. This movement you're doing is very similar to this. They're like, do you have a book on that? It's like, yeah, my wife brought the book in and we adapted my recovery to what I'd been training in all these years.
That's amazing.
And I
That's so
still
cool.
like I have the germ of a book. I'm about 20,000 words deep in where I've been chronicling the whole experience,
Great
and
idea.
and at the heart of it is this phrase that we used to say, karate ne sente nash. Karate ne sente nash. Karate is life.
Huh.
And it's like one of those things that's just been like my first social media post after they told me I'd had a stroke. I said, from now on, the world is my dojo and every day is training.
Yeah. Wow.
And That's how it's had to be.
That's wow.
And yeah, you were talking about the nerve stuff and all that. And it's like, we could probably in private have a really interesting conversation about a lot of that.
Yeah,
Because,
love to talk to you about this.
like 3 years deep into this, I have learned so much about neuroplasticity. It's just crazy, man.
Right. And kind of a part of what you were just talking about there, the cultural input that this is why, man, this is why every culture is important. There's so many different things. It's like you can't discount that we might have overlooked something that another culture knows, and has easily accessible to them if we just pay attention to each other a little bit,
Oh,
Stop fighting
one
about
of the things
what we can do
was
for each other.
my old sensei back in Cincinnati used to make all of his black belt candidates, his first degree black belt candidates would have to go read a book called the Bubishi. The Bubishi is like this book of like martial arts and all kinds of other stuff from China that was adapted through Okinawa, and it was kind of a fundamental part of karate.
Huh.
And it includes all kinds of stuff in it about nerves, about pharmacology. I mean, there's a lot of anatomy. I mean,
and that's stuff we call naturopathy over here, and it's like, but it is still good medicine,
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
a lot of Western, stuff kind of still poo-pooing some of that, and it's like, no, actually,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good stuff that comes from both places,
I'll drop a little anecdote about that, and then we'll have to cut here in a second. But one of the first things that they did, of course, when you have a stroke, typically the side that gets affected, the muscles all seize, and so you'll see stroke victims a lot of times their arm will be up like this. It'll stay that way. Well, mine did that. It tried to do that, and one of the first things that and it hurts really bad. And one of the first things that they did was like, oh, here's a medication for that. Here's a medication for the pain. Here's a medication for the spasticity, the locking up. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I said, I was like, if I take this combination of medicines, what's that going to do? Oh, well, it's going to make it go flaccid and it's not going to hurt anymore. And I'm like, I don't want it to be flaccid. I want to be
flaccid is not a good word. We don't like that word.
Flaccid's not a good word. In the mind of any red-blooded man, no.
Yeah, nope, that's not a good word. I don't like the sound of that at all.
No, it's gonna go flaccid, and you're not gonna be able to feel it. And I'm like, well, if I can't feel it, how can I do any work to recover what I can get out of it? And they're like, well, we're here to treat the symptom. I'm like, no, you keep those. And I turned down the pain meds, and I turned down the spasticity meds, and I end up talking to a lot of folks about the stroke thing because when it's kind of
a big thing, huh?
It's kind of like the elephant in the room with a lot of times with things, and I talk to other people who've been through it, and I'm like, how serious are you about recovery? How serious are you? If you're serious, there's going to be pain. There's going to be a lot of pain and aggravation and frustration and depression and anger. It's going to be hell. They're going to offer you all kinds of things to make it not be hell. But if you want recovery, you have to go through the hell. There is no shortcut.
What's that famous quote? Was it Winston Churchill? It's like, if you're going through hell, the only way out is just to keep going. The only real way out is to keep going.
Mm-hmm. The only way out is through.
Yeah.
It's been a wild trip, man. Been a wild trip. I really did not intend to get into talking about that stuff. And you mentioned the stuff.
Yeah, we're off comics here, but this is
you mentioned the stuff with the nerve issues and things, and I'm like, holy crap, man.
I didn't know who I was talking to. It's like, well, it's like you make me feel like, man, my little problems, but
no, dude.
Everything can mess with you. It's all a matter of your level of tolerance. And it's like, I'm probably a wimp. compared to
Oh,
you, but you
nah,
know,
nah, nah, nah. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's a trite saying, but it's true.
it is true. It is
It is
true.
very true.
We're unfair to ourselves when we try to do that, and it's like
Oh,
that's actually it crushes an awful lot of what could probably otherwise be beautiful art put out into the world because people are like not willing to share. You know.
oh, that's there was a thing that my ex wife asked me one time. She's like, "Where do you? How do you get the gall to just put artwork out there for people? What makes you think you're so what you've got to offer is all that and then some?" And I'm like, well, to borrow from Fight Club, I'm not a special and unique snowflake.
Yeah.
And by virtue of that, I know there's plenty of other people out there who are made up of the same flesh, bones, and crazy wiring I am, and they probably like some of the same stuff I like. That means something I make, they might like as well.
That's exactly it, right?
Mm-hmm. And who the hell am I to withhold my best from them?
Yeah. I mean, I know there's people out. I'm not kidding myself that I'm the best person out there doing what I'm doing, but I'm also not. I'm also not of the mind that I'm the worst. You know, and I'm like, if there's people out there who are maybe, no better or no worse than me out there doing it, then why can't I be out there doing it? You know,
Something I heard. I
it's that
can't
whole
remember who said
comparison
it, but
thing.
I heard this said a few years ago. Was and I can't remember the context of it, but it was this phrase said, the world is a poorer place for you, the ubiquitous everyone, not offering it their best.
That is God. That goes to the heart of some of my philosophy for my whole life. I am like, how is it? And this. I don't know that this needs to be political so much. It's just how is it that holding any person back from being able to achieve their best benefits mankind? How is it that you would hold anyone back? They used to not let certain people go to school or learn certain things. Or it's like if you take someone, any given one out there, and you prevent them from achieving their best, you may be harming the human race. Don't hold
The,
anyone back from doing their best. Let everybody do the best they can do it, whatever they can do. I mean, we need everybody. We need all the balls in the court here. We need everybody playing the game. We need everybody in all the way. And it's like we've got to stop trying to prevent people from being part of the team. And the
see,
team is human. The team is the
I,
human race. We got to
I
stop.
came up.
Some people can't be a part of this.
Uh,
You
if and folks can forgive me because I'm filling in for Rich, so I end up blathering about this stuff sometimes. But the way that I grew up, I was born and raised in kind of the bowels of deepest, darkest Appalachia,
Oh wow, yeah.
and
That's good.
I didn't have indoor plumbing until I was 11.
Wow.
So
How old are you? No,
I'm 51.
oh yeah, you're younger than me.
So 51. Yeah, I didn't have indoor plumbing till I was 11. And
It
the
says more
house,
about Appalachia than it does about your age.
well, the house that was in had 3 electrical outlets,
Wow.
and we had right before I was born, my father built a manual hand pump so that we could pump water from the cistern into the kitchen sink. And I worked on a tobacco and dairy farm from age 5 to age 18. So, like,
Crazy.
you know, I'm one of those people who's like, I look back at like I've actually had to take my kids and show them where I grew up, and I'm like, no, this is where it was. That's the outhouse.
Wow.
That's the smokehouse. That's like, I when you think about Appalachia in the early 1970s, early to mid 70s, it was almost it was closer to what you would imagine um, from being like the 1910s to 1920s. Like my father was an older man.
It was a good 50 to 75 years behind the rest of everything else. Huh?
Yeah, my dad was born in 1919 and used to talk fondly about life before the radio. So it all of that to say it gives me a very weird perspective on lots of things. And I think I think that's I really feel like that's a part of what allowed me to muscle through dealing with the stroke and stuff the way that I did, because like I
you had
I
to be tough.
I feel like there's people. God, this is such a terrible thing to say. People need to suffer, and it sucks. It sucks.
We learn through suffering.
But it's like the harder the things are that you go through and you manage to live through, the harder the things are that you can manage.
I think it's an education too, in ways that we can learn from it and go like, is there a way we can maybe not, like maybe we can make that suffering less going forward, so that people will have to suffer other things and get and improve other things.
Well,
it's kind of a stage thing in my mind, but
it's in the course of my life, I've gone from not having a phone, like as a kid, not having a phone in indoor plumbing, to I wrote the specs for one of the first automated lip sync applications. So, I mean,
know who's going to be the guy, right?
I guess what pointed me to that, you were talking about, we're getting into the thing about people and offering their best, and I'm like, it's amazing how often people have no idea where value will come from.
Yeah, you can't discount it. You can't. It's not fair to discount where value might come from.
When I first tried getting into comics, I was 19 and I'd left Appalachia to move to New York. And oh my God.
Big difference.
I lived in Eastern Connecticut because I had ended up with a weird situation where I could live with some folks who had a construction business, and I worked construction Monday through Thursday, about 12 hours a day, just mostly moving rock by hand. Then come Friday, I would get up, catch a train from Brewster over to Manhattan, take a portfolio and go into offices, pester the crap out of everybody under the sun, trying to get any editors who would look at me to give me a shot, absolutely getting shot down constantly. When all offices and stuff would close, I'd go down to Central Park, pull out a backpack full of art supplies and start hustling sketches of tourists for money. Awesome. And do that all night Friday night, all day Saturday, all night Saturday night. Sunday, I'd walk down to the Met, study for a while, then catch a train back and rinse, repeat. That's the first year of my professional life. And it was like,
and in the meantime, you're just getting exposed to all of this stuff that you've never been exposed to, right?
Yeah. Oh, I was like, like on the one hand, it's like I literally was going like 2.5, 3 days with no sleep, but I was like, why would I sleep? I'm here.
I'm the city that never sleeps.
I'm here where everything happens. I have the opportunity to meet people, to draw, to learn, to study, to go to the Met. When am I going to get to go to the Met? I dropped out of college to pursue that, to do that. And I'm glad I did.
I have kind of a weird opposite story of that. I grew up in the sprawling metropolis that is Los Angeles.
Ooh.
And big, wild, crazy ass city. And like you said, in the early 70s. Right about 1980, I was in high school. And midway through high school, my parents decided that they were going to retire and move back to a place where my father had lived, which was Missouri.
Woo, not far from where I'm at now.
Right in the 80s, we went to this small town it's not so small now. It's a real tiny little town. I went from Los Angeles to a town of maybe 10,000 people in the middle of right in the middle of the Ozarks. So I went from the big everything to the small, simple, quiet, slower paced, just chill. And it was honestly, it was an amazing experience too, because you got a new perspective. It's like, I swear perspectives are great, getting different perspectives, getting outside of your own perspective. More people need to do that more often.
Oh yeah.
Travel, go see a different thing, spend a little time there, get a different perspective, see what it's like. It can really change everything about the way you think about everything.
I lived in different cities for 25 years of my life, starting, with living I say I moved to New York. I was actually a half hour out of New York, and which might as well be. And, there I've lived in Cincinnati, Indianapolis, number of nothing near as large as New York, but still, large cities compared to what I'm used to, what I was used to growing up. And, when life took a weird turn a few years ago and my first marriage ended, it was time to come back home to Kentucky, man.
I've never been to Kentucky.
Man, there's a governor of this state. He was governor when I was a little kid, named A.B. Happy Chandler. Weird name. Happy Chandler.
Like maybe I've heard
this. And I always mention him to folks because there was this great quote that I love from him. And he said in all his travels throughout the world, he had never met anyone from Kentucky who wasn't either dreaming of home or on their way back there.
Huh. Interesting.
Yep. Kentucky is an odd place. I will. It is.
Well, it certainly gets that odd reputation, doesn't it?
I live. I live in what I call the other Kentucky now. Okay. I'm in the western tip, but I grew up literally 6 hours straight east from where I'm at right now. And my father used to joke when I was a kid. He'd say, "Son, there's two Kentuckys. There's Eastern Kentucky and there's Western Kentucky, and they both hate Louisville." Yep, neither one of us want to claim Louisville.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky is deep Appalachia, and it's very different than Western Kentucky. But the whole state is, I love it here. So
it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm actually 2 hours from St. Louis, 2 hours from Nashville, I'm like 2 hours from everything.
It's a goddamn anomaly. 2 hours from everywhere.
It's wild. I mean, it's like 6 hours from Chicago. But, that's Chicago, and, rarely will I set foot there. I don't like Chicago.
I always say I've been in 40 states, probably 40 states, 40 of the United States. And of the 10 I haven't been in, they're all, of the 10 I haven't been in, it's everything east of Texas and south of the Mason-Dixon line.
Oh, you're talking
like,
my stomping ground, man.
That's pretty much the only places I've never been, other than I have not been to Alaska or Hawaii. Everywhere else I've pretty much been or been through.
Yeah, where I live, this was one of the big things for me after the stroke was, can I still hunt?
Oh yeah.
And first deer season afterwards, I had rigged up a tripod to be able to shoot from, and brought one home.
I was thinking if you could put your hand on a weight and do weights, and you could probably.
Yep. And just this year, this past deer season was this was fun. It was a Friday night for date night. Took the wife and took her deer hunting, and we got one, and we spent the evening. We spent the evening skinning it, butchering it, doing it all ourselves. And I tell you what, man, it's one of those things a lot of people think of as it's a really strange thing to a lot of folks, but man, that's a bonding experience.
I mean, it's real human life, and people tend to forget that, I guess, because most of us don't have to do that. And it's like, well,
Well,
That doesn't make it not a thing.
when that first season after the stroke, she's like, "You don't have to do this." I was like, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." I'm like, there's just this principle. I need to know that I can still go out in those woods and bring home dinner.
It's ingrained in you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Absolutely. Yeah.
Rich jokes with me all the time about being a Neanderthal. But
the Neanderthals were actually incredibly smart and ahead of the rest of the people that they were around. So that's actually that's a compliment. Next time he calls you a Neanderthal, just go thank you. You just basically elevated me above the people around me by saying that, because that's what you were.
I've told them, I'm like, you ain't met my brothers, man. There's some real knuckle draggers.
Well, now that's a different story. I'm sure that's a different story.
Pardon me. I got all riled up there because I've actually had the flu for the last 2 weeks.
God, well, take care.
So
there's
that's
crap going around.
Oh man. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to have you back on sometime.
Yeah, great. This is fun. Definitely. I like
get you on here and let Rich tear into you, because he's always a hoot with stuff, man.
He was talking about how he wanted, he likes the dynamic and the conflict and the frustration and everything. And I'm like, well, there is some. I said, I've got some of that, but I'm not necessarily I'm not going to be your guy that's going to come in there and tell you how much less artists are, how shitty anyone else is, because they aren't what I am. I'm not that guy. That's not the guy I'll be. But, I can definitely point out things that frustrate me. There are things that frustrate me in general about some of the things in the industry. And it's like, yeah, we just, say these things and we piss each other off. And it's like, well, where's, it's like, unless we can figure out how to solve these things and work through them, which I think is what he was saying, this could be done here. And I'm like, that's cool. That I appreciate. That I'll come on. We'll talk about. Like, let's look at some of the actual issues and see if we can talk about solutions that might work, for people when they're having a situation that needs resolving. That's cool. I love solving problems.
Absolutely, man. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap this up in a tidy little bow. So I think my guy behind the scenes, I forgot which dude is running the show behind the scenes tonight. Oh no, I'm terrible. He's going to kick my ass for that later.
Kyle.
But,
and I'm the only one you've met in person.
Oh my God!
Now I will say it was pre-stroke, but I'm the only one you've met in person.
When did we meet?
When Source Point Press had their convention. And you came up and hung out with Dirk. I'm the comic book store that's down the street from Dirk.
Oh wow, that's crazy, man. Meet so many people on this stuff. A lot of it runs together.
Yeah, I guess it does. It can.
Yeah,
can. I don't get out to enough shows. I need to get to more shows. I want to meet more. Every time I'm on one of these things, there's always a bunch of people that I'm going, I want to meet these people in person. And I'm like, where are you? Oh, well, we're back east someplace. I'm like, damn it. I'm like, I never get back east.
Where are you at these days, man?
Well, I after being all over the place in different places, Los Angeles, the Midwest, New York, Europe, LA again. I'm in Portland, Oregon. There's a big comics community here, and I came here thinking that'd be really cool. So I came here and kind of fell in love with this place. It's a very interesting, talk about an interesting place. And of course, it's been much maligned lately, and people do not understand and have the complete wrong idea about us. It's like, it's not at all what you may have heard, but it's actually a really wonderful place. It's really cool. And I like it here, but I don't get to travel as much as I would like to, as I used to travel a lot. I went and backpacked a few years ago. I went and backpacked Europe, just by myself. That was went and backpacked several months, backpacked and worked as went through 11 countries plus Morocco. So I went to Africa while I was there. And, I've done a lot of traveling, but I'm not very much anymore. I'm not getting out. I'm lucky if I can get across the state line now. I go down to LA because I've got family down there, and I've got, go down there for a disaster every year. So it's just.
Well, we'll have to see if we can't get you in a show or two out this way. There's some good shows in Knoxville and Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, I'd love to
Knoxville, Tennessee is the most happening city for comics that I've seen.
I have been through Tennessee. I got to say, when I was in Virginia and Washington D.C. once, I had an online relationship for a couple of years, and I went out there over land, and I went through Tennessee, and I was there, and I got to see it. It was real pretty too, and I was like, well, I wish I could spend a little more time and go up and look around some of the other places around. But
yeah, man.
Yep. There's a lot of history there, so
I'll put I'll put a bug in some folks' ears and see if we can't find somebody to help bring you out to the region for a show or two sometime.
God, I'd love it. I'd do it. I'd love it. It'd be awesome. Meet more people. That'd be awesome.
You want to drop some links real quick to any Kickstarters and stuff you got going on, so people can have that.
Yeah, let me do that. You want me to put it in the chat, right?
Yeah, you can put them in the chat and then call them out on here.
I've got let me find it. I've got kind of a horror book that started out as a
now you're talking my language.
Yeah. Well, this started out with a bunch of guys. When I first discovered the indie community, I found a bunch of guys who had these pumpkin-headed characters, and I was like, "Oh, this would be really cool if we put them all together and did like a Halloween kind of story." So I talked to them, and they were like on board. And then a bunch of other guys, the supernatural guys, came in, and they were interested. So we put a bunch of guys together and did this story called Infinite Souls, and we just did the second half of that story. And then the idea is to move on into a book of these characters that are kind of quirky and supernatural. And call it the Twilight Order, and that's where we're going from here. So this wound up being kind of like the story that will break ground for an ongoing kind of collaboration team of interesting characters. So that's actually just wrapped up, but it is accepting late pledges, so you can grab the books. And there's a set of trading cards. I got some beautiful artists, beautiful artwork. Done by some of our guys, but the guy who did the trading cards of our main characters, Dale Yaddo, has a great character in the book named Seance, and she just joined us at the end of the first book, but she'll be hanging out with us. Dale's a great guy, really talented, but I'm just working with so many guys that are like indie creators who create characters or do books, and they're just fascinating. It's so neat. I'm just overwhelmed by like how many guys are just so interesting and so creative, and I love that. So this is a result of all of those creative minds, and all of their stuff kind of coming together into a story. So it's a real fun story, and there's going to be more where that came from.
Cool.
And that's the one I just dropped. That just wrapped up. I've got other things still in progress. Some things that were kind of sort of delayed, but they're going to be back. 2026, I could potentially have 4 different things released if 2026 works out really well. I'm kind of personally struggling right now. My whole life, I started working when I was 16 years old, like job, paid out in the world kind of thing. And I have never been out of work for more than a couple months. Until recently. I've been out of work now for over a year, just working on my stuff, working on my own company. But as far as having an actual day job, I haven't had one now for a long time, and it's starting to hurt. So I'm kind of desperately punching around for something to do, and I'm like, something's going to have to happen like pretty darn quick. So we are in tough times, lean times.
I understand that now.
Yeah.
Well, I clicked on the Kickstarter. It looks pretty interesting, and I'm going to give that a look through. And hopefully folks watching will do the same.
Yeah. So let me know if there's anything that you see or that you're interested, because there's still some potential for some stuff that's not necessarily on the late pledges that can be worked out. If you're fascinated with some of the ideas,
nice.
There are some things. Let me know.
Very cool, man.
Touch.
Well, Mr. Silverwood, it has been awesome talking to you. Kyle, you want to take us out?
Thank you.